Leslie Marshall Show, the only true democracy in talk radio, of, for, and by you, the people. Live nationwide and streaming live at lesliemarshallshow.com. Call in with your thoughts at 888-6-LESLIE.
Here to set you free on this Friday, TGIF. How you doing? I'm Leslie Marshall. Welcome or welcome back. Only true democracy and talk. Thank you to listening on radio, on listening on stream, listening on podcast, all the various networks that carry the show, and for watching us well on Twitter's Periscope, Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live, and YouTube Live. I'm your host, Leslie Marshall. Joining us today is Melinda Newhouse. Melinda is with the United Steelworkers. She directs the USW's Strategic Campaigns Department, supporting members during challenging bargaining. Now, she has been 23 years with the USW as a steelworker, and she and her department have helped the members of this great union mobilize and build power across a wide range of industries, and that includes steel, not just steel, oil, paper, healthcare, and more. Please check out the website for USW. And I know when we've had people on from the USW in the past, you certainly have. You learn a lot about this great union and maybe being a part of it yourself, usw.org. And on Twitter and Instagram, follow them there at Steelworkers. Thank you for joining us, Melinda. Do you prefer Ms. Newhouse? Melinda, what would you like on this Friday afternoon?
Melinda is fantastic.
Sounds good, and it's a pretty name. Melinda, thank you for joining us so much to talk about. Over the past year, especially during a pandemic, we have seen a wave of workers fed up. Workers across the nation who are now taking bold action because they're fed up. It's a movement that has been since dubbed Striketober. And when you look at workers specifically in areas like manufacturing, healthcare, education, or in the service sector, other industries as well, they put their lives on the line, especially in healthcare, each and every day. They're working exhausting amounts of hours. They're working overtime, more overtime than we've ever seen. And why? Just to keep our nation operating during this pandemic. Before we talk more about this, can you touch upon that Striketober with workers who are fed up, who sometimes feel burnt out working all these hours and all this overtime in these areas of manufacturing, healthcare, education, the service sector, and others?
Sure, Leslie. I first want to say thanks so much for having me on. It's always a good day to talk about worker action and worker empowerment. So I'm
Absolutely.
happy to be with you. As we think about what's happened over the last couple years with this pandemic, in the early days, it was very uncertain, but right now we're seeing companies are reporting record income, record profit, record sales, CEO pay is skyrocketing, dividends for Wall Street way up. And what do workers get? Most of them are working, like you said, longer hours, short-staffed, which means they have to work even longer hours. Worker pay is stagnant. Workers start to think about this risk-reward analysis. We're going to work. We are putting our families at risk. We are putting ourselves at risk. And for what kind of benefit? And so, as you said, workers are fed up. They're tired of being stomped on and crapped on, and they really would like to have some respect. And so I think what we're seeing is people feeling like they finally have a chance to stand up. Part of it is because of the labor shortage that's happening. People feel like the company scare tactics are less scary. And they feel like now is the time to take advantage and to stand up for themselves and for future generations of workers.
When you talk about, and to your point, about what's happening to these corporations and their bottom line and these employers, they're bringing in, as you mentioned, record profits. And if you think about it, this labor force has enabled the rich to get richer, right? It's their hard work on their backs that the world's billionaires or millionaires become billionaires. But despite this, many workers are facing demands for concessions like two-tiered wage systems and threats to their retirement security. Can you speak to those threats? Can you speak to those concessions that workers are facing demands of from these corporations that are getting richer on their backs?
Absolutely. I think about a campaign that I was involved with during October, during Striketober, at Kaiser Healthcare, where we have 7,000 of our members, but there were 32,000 members in this alliance of healthcare unions, representing everyone from housekeepers and food service to registered nurses and pharmacists, who really showed up in the darkest days of the pandemic. And we had a member who was a mobility tech who literally was moving dead bodies to freezer trucks outside during the surge that was seen in Southern California. And these members sacrificed. They showed up when they were supposed to show up, and they took pride in doing their work. And what Kaiser did was they came to the bargaining table, and we had just seen these signs: heroes work here, healthcare heroes. And Kaiser comes to the table and says, 1% raise, and we need to pay all new hires or new employees less money when they start. Meanwhile, Kaiser's sitting on $45 billion in cash reserves. And so it was no surprise that all of those workers, through all of those classifications, stood up and said, no, we're not going to take it, and this is not acceptable, and we deserve respect on the job. And these workers mobilized and communicated like they have never done before. It's like this pandemic really put some resolve into them to realize, we're stronger together and we look after each other, because clearly our employer is not looking after us. And when you talk about, Leslie, 32,000 members, they're spread across 100 geographic locations. So they're not all working at the same place. Some are working in hospitals. Some are working in clinics. Some are working in clinics and are told, don't work at your clinic. Now we need, because of the COVID surge, we need you to go work at this hospital, or we need you to go to this testing location and help process people who are taking COVID tests. And so when members get fed up, like we're talking about, they started talking to each other and organizing together, and they mounted the strongest campaign that Kaiser has seen over the period of that bargaining, in order to push back, and really were at the brink of a strike, so close to a strike that they hadn't seen before. And it really shows the courage that these members had, and the tenacity in order to beat back one of the major and most influential employers in Southern California.
There's so much I want to say. We have just a couple of minutes till break. There's power in numbers, and the workers here have proven this, right? When they stood together and demanded the kind of wages, the working conditions, and the benefits they deserve. And you know what? To do this to healthcare workers, especially during a pandemic, shame on Kaiser. And I know some people say, you hear people say, well, we're in a pandemic. How can a healthcare worker strike? Listen, these people are putting their lives on, I'm married to a healthcare worker. These people are putting their lives on the line every day. They are overwhelmed physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually, I might add. I was watching a documentary yesterday on COVID, and they had to stop the tape of this one doctor they were interviewing because he got so emotional. And what he said is, you have no idea what it's like to see so many dead bodies, to have to move those dead bodies. So when you said, Melinda, that they're coming to work, they're moving dead bodies, people don't understand. That's a lot more difficult on the human psyche and the human heart than people understand. And another thing, these people want to work. They just want to be paid a decent wage, have proper working conditions, and get the benefits they deserve. And I don't think that's too much to ask in the profession they're in and during this pandemic. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. And when we come back, we'll continue talking more with Melinda Newhouse from the United Steelworkers, Director of the USW Strategic Campaign Department. Back with her, back with you right after this.
I want to get back to seeing my grandbabies every Sunday and smothering them with big hugs and kisses.
I want to get back to football games with my boys.
I want to get back to feeling and touching, connecting with the people around me.
I want to get back to family dinners and my grandma's mac and cheese.
I want to get back to real grocery shopping, taking my time, walking down every aisle, smelling the tomatoes and melons, having a free sample or two, or three.
COVID-19 has changed how we live and how we feel. But now, there are vaccines. And they are the first step that let us get back to feeling optimistic about the days ahead of us. It's okay to have questions.
Is it safe?
Should I get it?
Should I wait?
Now, get the facts. Learn more at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hey sis, missed you this morning. Kim told me you weren't feeling well, so I'm just doing a self-care check.
Oh, thank you, friend.
How you doing?
Girl, listen, my energy was so low because I didn't eat breakfast when I got up, so I had to miss virtual yoga with y'all.
Trust me, I understand.
But I'm doing much better now that I've eaten, so I'm back on track.
Great. In that case, let's get some steps in tonight. I'll come over and we can walk around the lake.
Sounds good. Appreciate you being in my business, too. Now, let me get in yours. Did you check your blood pressure today?
I did that and my squats, okay?
Okay.
High blood pressure is not going to be my friend if I can help it. See you at 6?
Let's get it. See you then.
Now more than ever, it's important that we protect our hearts and the hearts of those we love. Check in on one another and be a part of a healthy blood pressure movement. Rally your squad to take the online pledge at releasethepressure.org. Brought to you by the Release the Pressure Coalition and the Ad Council.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day Carmelita Torres led the Bath riots at the El Paso-Juarez border. Mexican workers traveled daily across the Santa Fe Bridge from Juarez, Mexico, into El Paso, Texas for work. As a condition of entry, workers were required to strip naked and be sprayed with a toxic mixture of chemicals. U.S. health officials insisted they were trying to stop the spread of typhus through this type of delousing campaign. However, they were just as motivated by racist typecasting of Mexicans as dirty. David Dorado Romo, author of Ringside to a Revolution, tells the story of 17-year-old Carmelita Torres. Amid rumors that health workers secretly photographed and then distributed photos of the naked women as they were being sprayed, Carmelita crossed into El Paso every day where she worked as a maid. But on this day, instead of stripping down, she refused fumigation and convinced the other women to demonstrate with her against this humiliating daily procedure. Within an hour, she and 200 other women had blocked all traffic coming into El Paso. Newspaper reports claimed several thousand protesters by the end of the day. The women marched to the disinfection camp, hoping to convince those undergoing disinfection to join them. When health officials tried to disperse the crowd, they were met with rocks and bottles. The women then laid down on the trolley tracks to stop the delivery of more workers and wrestled with motormen for control of the cars. The riots lasted for 3 days, but the spraying of Mexican workers with DDT and other toxic chemicals continued for more than 40 years. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
And we're back. I'm Leslie Marshall. Welcome or welcome back. We welcome Melinda Newhouse and welcome her back. She was with us for the first segment if you've just tuned in. She's with the United Steelworkers and she directs the USW Strategic Campaigns Department. We're talking with her about Striketober. Melinda, thank you for holding and welcome back. Speaking of Striketober, without knowing it at the time, members of USW Local 40, which began their unfair labor practice strike against special metals on October 1st, were at the forefront of this Striketober movement. Now, in addition to wage cuts and freezes, the company's initial proposal demanded significant increases to the cost of healthcare benefits and elimination of life insurance for retirees, among other cuts. Melinda, can you speak to us about USW Local 40, their unfair labor practice strike against special metals that started on October 1st, the forefront of the Striketober movement, and the proposal by companies like this, and we've seen this, like you mentioned with Kaiser in the last segment, but with USW Local 40, who cuts healthcare benefits and eliminates life insurance, even more so during a pandemic?
I know when you said that, it's just, yes, life insurance for retirees, people who have already dedicated their life to the company, you're going to cut their life insurance. It's outrageous. And, you said this before in the previous segment, decisions to go on strike are not taken lightly because people want to work. They are proud. They want to provide for their families. And so when we talk about workers in Striketober and beyond, standing up to corporate America, they don't do it because they woke up and decided to do it one day. They do it because it's a tax over a period of time. And this is just, outrageous that this company wants to do this to these workers in Huntington, West Virginia. I'm proud to say that this is such a strong group that they have had 0 people cross the picket line. So they went on strike in October 1st. They're still on strike, and they have had 0 people cross the picket line because everyone is united around protecting retirees and protecting health care for members and their families. It's hard in these winter months, and they've had a couple really, really cold nights where they've had to actually shut down the picket line due to the safety of the strikers, and then reopen them the next day. But they are determined to stand their ground and to fight back here. They've had tremendous support from the community, Leslie. Of course, it's just an outpouring because when people hear these stories, you can't help but be out there and say, what can we do to help you? So from food and diapers to fundraising events, they have had strong support, which has helped them stand up in this case.
And in this case, Kaiser, all the other cases, what we're definitely seeing is more cohesion, workers sticking together like never before. Do you think that's made the difference in strikes ending sooner, or workers not having to strike and corporations sitting down and really listening and, this sticking together by these workers? Has that really made corporations stand up and take notice? Did they get their attention in doing this?
I certainly think some have. And, you know, the smart ones, I'll tell you, have, because what we're seeing is it's across the country and it's across sectors. It's not just people who work with their hands and make things in a factory. You know, you see service sector workers who are tired of having to deal with angry customers, unsure whether they're going to have working hours, having to mask people or having to enforce mask mandates, these things where, you know, people are not getting paid what people should get paid to do those types of things. So I definitely think that people are sticking together, and there is this collective sense of wanting to support each other and feeling like in the toughest of times, this is the times when we have to come together. And so certainly some companies are, but I would tell you that, you know, some companies are trying to use the same playbook they always have, where they try to scare people and they try to say, well, your jobs will get shipped overseas if you try to stand up for yourself. Meanwhile, like we said at the beginning, raking in record profits, record income with record sales. But I think people and workers specifically are seeing through that and standing together, as you said.
Yeah, what I like that you had mentioned, and you know, I had read about this, was that there wasn't just support from, you know, fellow unions or fellow union workers, but the entire community, and that's heartwarming because, you know, everybody in the community, whether you're part of a union, part of this union, or not part of a union, or just in the community, and you know what these workers are dealing with, and you hear what these corporations are doing, and people read about the rich getting richer, the people read about the record profits that these corporations are having. In this particular fight, this attracted the attention of Senator Bernie Sanders. And Senator Sanders, late last year, appealed to Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, actually owns Special Metals, and they asked him to intervene. You know, can you speak to us with that and what happened with that?
Yes, Senator Sanders did reach out for support, did reach out to Warren Buffett, as you mentioned. This is a typical response that we hear dealing with companies. It's someone basically sort of wringing their hands or wiping their hands and saying, well, I allow the companies under me to manage themselves, which is pretty much what Warren Buffett did. So it's not surprising because we see that nobody wants to actually take responsibility for things. But, you know, it is a Berkshire Hathaway company. It is a profitable company. And so there's absolutely no reason why they need to come after cuts to retirees and to families.
Absolutely. We're going to take a break. We have less than a minute to our hard break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some other workers because special metal workers, well, they were far from alone in this nation, and that's why it was called Striketober. I'm Leslie Marshall. We'll be back with Melinda Newhouse from the United Steelworkers. And like I said, check out their website, usw.org. Follow them on Twitter @Steelworkers. Follow them on Instagram @Steelworkers. And a reminder that Melinda is USW Strategic Campaigns Department Director. We'll be back with her. We'll be back with you right after this. Don't go away.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Can I touch this? Where does sand come from? Is this tree good for climbing? What happens if I mix these two things together? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Storing your guns securely is the best way to prevent family fire, including unintentional shootings. For more information on safe gun storage and ways to keep your family safe, visit endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org.
What do we keep in the attic? What's this thing called? Can I ride my bike backwards?
Like I said, kids are curious It's up to us to keep them safe. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Right now, our country feels divided, but there's a place where people are coming together.
I gotta tell you, I was nervous to talk to someone so different than me.
Me too, but I'm glad we are.
Love Has No Labels and One Small Step are helping people with different political views, beliefs, and life experiences come together through conversation, and it feels good.
Wow, your story is so...
Interesting?
Yeah.
When people actually sit down, talk, and listen to one another, they can break down boundaries and connect as human beings. At lovehasnolabels.com/onesmallstep, you can listen to amazing, life-changing conversations and find simple tools to start a conversation of your own.
I know one thing. This conversation gives me hope.
It gives me a lot of hope, too.
Take a step toward bringing our country and your community together by having the courage to start a conversation at lovehasnolabels.com/onesmallstep. A message from StoryCorps, Love Has No Labels, and the Ad Council.
Our society has coined expressions like philanthropist to encourage and hail people's charitable spirit. Look on the flip side of that shiny coin of generosity, however, and you'll find that its base substance is societal selfishness. After all, the need for charity only exists because we're tolerating intentional injustices and widespread inequality created by power elites. A society as supremely wealthy as ours ought not be relegating needy families and essential components of the common good to the whims of a few rich philanthropists. Yes, corporate and individual donations can help at the margins, but they don't fix anything. Thus, food banks, health clinics, etc. must constantly scrounge for more charity, while big donors have their charitable spirit subsidized with tax breaks that siphon money from our public treasury. Especially offensive to me is the common grandiose assertion by fat cat donors that charity is their way of, quote, giving back to society. Hello? If they can give so much, it's probably because they've been taking too much. As business columnist Andrew Ross Sorkin points out, all too often, charitable gifts are used to make up for the failure of companies to pay people a living wage and treat their workers with dignity. It's not just the unemployed who rely on food banks, but janitors, nannies, Uber drivers, checkout clerks, and others who work full-time but are so poorly paid they can't make ends meet. That's not a sad charity case, but a matter of criminal exploitation by wealthy elites. And the charitable thing to do is to outlaw it and require a living wage for all. This is Jim Hightower saying, as Sorkin puts it, the aim should be to create a society where we don't need places like food banks. We should be trying to put the food banks out of business.
We are back. We are me, Leslie Marshall, and Melinda Newhouse from the Steelworkers, USW Strategic Campaigns Department Director. Melinda, thank you for holding and welcome back. As I mentioned before, we went to break at the end of the last segment. Workers at Special Metals were far alone in this striketober. They were leading the fray October 1st, but on October 4th, there were approximately 1,400 members of the Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers, and Grain Millers International Union, the BCTGM. They walked off the job at not one, but 4 Kellogg's plants, fighting back against concessionary contract proposals that would have imposed, again, higher health care and benefit costs, cut vacation time, and created a 2-tier wage schedule that would have divided that workforce. Melinda, can you speak to the BCTGM workers that walked off the job at those 4 Kellogg's plants?
Sure. These workers stepped up to feed us during the pandemic. working long hours, sometimes 12, 16-hour shifts, day in and day out. And again, this is just a repeated pattern where the company comes in and Kellogg says, we need to cut $13 off of the top pay permanently for anybody who comes in as a new employee. And so these workers stood up, not just for themselves here, but really future generations. We talked about these two-tier proposals and this sort of corporate agenda that's been around for a long time. And, for any of your listeners or viewers who don't understand, a two-tier system is something where you will have two people who are doing the very same job, but they will be getting paid different amounts because in a two-tier system, if someone is hired after a certain date, they automatically make less than their coworkers who are doing the same thing. And so this is a very much a divide and conquer mentality that corporate America has been pushing for a long time. And workers are taking advantage of this moment with a worker shortage and with strong collective support to push back on these things and sometimes roll them back and sometimes fight them off entirely, like at Kellogg's.
Again, right? Power in numbers, not one plant, but four. And then when you look at the UAW, the United Auto Workers, 10,000 workers who were represented by the United Auto Workers, the UAW, at John Deere. They began their strike 10 days after that, October 14th. And they ultimately won a contract that does provide good wages, that does provide other benefits that benefit the worker. So again, this Striketober has been for some very effective.
Absolutely.
But we don't need to go to that point. Like you said, we don't need to go to that point. These corporations push it and are pushing these people beyond the breaking point. And again, to me, it's inexcusable to do this to a worker, especially in these fields, especially during a pandemic.
And Leslie, you think about it, John Deere and Kellogg's are the quintessential American company names. You think of these names, you think about, a John Deere tractor that's green that you had as a kid, or you see in the fields or in commercials. You think about cereal that you grew up eating. And these quintessential American companies are basically stomping on the American workers, and you expect more from these corporations like we've talked about. And certainly you would hope that they can see ahead and see that this is the time to be stepping up as corporate citizens and doing what's right.
There's no question about it. And again, when we talk about these things, you talk about food, right? You talk about food. You talk about healthcare. You talk about equipment. I mean, these are all things that these people are essential workers, and these things are essential to all of our lives. And so these workers, anything they do in their job, anything they're making, and they're mass producing, to we the consumer, we need this. We need them. We rely on this, and we rely on them. But let's talk about that John Deere, right? They were able to get a good contract days before they were forced to strike. Excuse me, I'm talking about Kaiser. Let me go back to Kaiser. Kaiser, we had said they pushed it. They didn't go to a strike. They were really up against the clock. Days before they were going to strike, they were able to get a good contract. But there was a vote to authorize a strike in early October, Striketober. Tens of thousands of workers at Kaiser, again, where people are needed in their jobs, where people want to do their jobs. But for crying out loud, you can't get blood out of a rock. These people have given everything that they can and then some. When you just look at the amount of hours that they're putting in, and a lot of these people, I just want to remind everyone watching and everyone listening, especially during this pandemic and especially in healthcare, these workers wear many hats. They don't just do the job that they were hired to do, because There are people that get sick and have to leave, and they have to pick up the slack. So there's people out there doing the job of 2 or 3 people, and they're doing jobs in addition to the job that they know and they were trained to do, because that's what you do when you work in these businesses. That's what you do when you work in healthcare and when you work for a company like Kaiser.
Totally true. And we label these workers essential. And then when it comes to the bargaining table, employers want to say, you're essential. We need you to come in here. We need you to make these record profits for us. But hey, you know what? You're essential and we appreciate it. But now we have to take more from you because we have to make more. And it feels like that's really a trend. And that's really the pattern that we're seeing. We had some steel workers who ended up on strike November 1st at ArcelorMittal in Shelby, Ohio. And these people, we talk about working long hours, they are scheduled 56 to 60 hours a week. And they are scheduled to work 7 days a week. And it's not because there's something that's happening and so they have to work a little bit of overtime. Instead of hiring more people, the company wants to schedule them to work seven days, and they want to see their families. They want to spend time with their kids. They want to go to some ball games. They want to go to church. And so they had it, and they ended up going on strike November 1st. And after 10 days, they were able to win some things in their contract. But it's that kind of pressure that's really pushing workers to take this action. I can't imagine being forced to work 7 days a week, week after week after week. It's unconscionable.
You know what? Even God rested on the 7th day, right? I mean, that's why we have Sunday. It's the first in our week. I always say that, when I'll be like, I need a day off. Even God rested on the 7th day, But all jokes aside, that doesn't help your workforce. It doesn't help. I know corporations think they help with productivity, but they say happy wife, happy life. Happy worker, better productivity. Happy worker, better work environment. Happy worker, better worker. And not just that, you have to look at, these are human beings. They're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. Why do you think, Melinda, these corporations push it to these points? Because they know workers are going to band together. They know workers are going to unite. They know workers are going to strike if they're not treated in a decent manner. And these are not unreasonable requests. Keeping life insurance that they've had, keeping healthcare benefits that they've had, keeping those costs down, especially when these corporations are making record profits and certainly can afford to do that, and asking for, a decent COLA, cost of living adjustment increase to their wages. Can you speak to that?
I mean, I think that they push it because they're money hungry, because they're greedy. One of the things that they said at Kellogg's is greedy, not needy. They don't need these concessions. They're greedy. And I think it is the bottom line and driving up dividends that's really pushing this. And it has been for decades, really. Absolutely. And so now, right in this moment, we're seeing Striketober plus, because workers with the labor shortage are feeling like they can push further, and the company scare tactics don't work.
Absolutely.
And so it's really inspiring to see.
It is. Melinda, we'll be back with you in a moment. Back with Melinda Newhouse from the United Steelworkers Strategic Campaigns Department. She's director there. I'm Leslie Marshall. Quick break. And back to you and her right after this.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
COVID-19 has changed how we live and how we feel. We show up differently, worship differently, and have found new ways to express our love and support to family and friends. But now there are vaccines, and they are the first step that lets us get back into the things we miss most. Like spreading the word without spreading concern, girls tripping instead of solo sipping, brunching instead of late night munching, and talking smack with a side of mac and cheese. It's okay to have questions about COVID-19 vaccines.
Should I get it?
Should I wait?
Is it safe?
Can I trust it?
What about pre-existing conditions?
Now get the facts. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when COVID-19 vaccines are available to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
(911) What's your emergency?
America's healthcare system is broken and people are dying.
Welcome to Code WAC, where we shine a light on our callous healthcare system, how it hurts us, and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Brenda Gazar. This time on Code WAC, what is the clearest path for single payer in America? Can state-based legislation like California's Assembly Bill 1400 point the way? We recently spoke to Dr. Paul Song, president of Physicians for a National Health Program, California, to get his take. Why do you think the governor has been silent on AB 1400?
I think that he's very close to other organizations. It's no secret that he is very close to Dustin Corcoran, who is the head of the CMA, the California Medical Association. In fact, that French Laundry dinner that he was criticized for, Dustin Corcoran was there. And I think that he has maintained close ties to people in the insurance industry as well. Of all the people here in the state of California getting private insurance, the majority of them are getting it from Kaiser. So Kaiser is quite powerful here in the state. Over the last several years, they've actually spent more money on lobbying than I think almost every other industry. So all of these special forces and interests have much greater access to the governor than, unfortunately, we the people.
So who will be the biggest winners if AB 1400 does pass?
Well, I think especially all those people on Medi-Cal would greatly benefit. I think several people who are getting employer-sponsored health care, which is woefully inadequate, that have too high copays and deductibles.
Get the full Code WAC story on progressivevoices.com and on the PV app. Catch all our episodes by subscribing to Code WAC wherever you find your podcasts. This podcast is powered by Heal California, a nonprofit that uplifts the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. Until next time, stay healthy.
We are back. I'm Leslie Marshall. How you doing? Happy Friday. TGIF. Melinda Newhouse from the United Steelworker, who directs the United Steelworkers Strategic Campaigns Department. As I mentioned, they support members during challenging bargaining. She's been with them for 23 years. Her department helped USW members mobilize and build power across a wide range of industries: steel, oil, paper, healthcare, and more. Check out their website, usw.org, and please follow them on Instagram at Steelworkers and on Twitter at Steelworkers as well. Melinda, thank you for holding, and welcome back. One of the things, whether it's Kaiser or whether it's John Deere or whether it's Steel Metals, and the list goes on, in all of these cases we see a pattern, and that pattern seems to be that solidarity and collective action in these individual workplaces, with the workplaces and with the unions across the labor movement won, right? I mean, that won. They won Striketober. They won the day. Can you speak to that? Can you speak to the solidarity and the collective action and that being a winning formula for workers this time around?
Absolutely. We know that if we stand together, there is power in numbers. The biggest strength that if you go to your boss and you have a suggestion and it's just you, then the boss may listen to you, but it's just you. If you have a group of you who go with the same suggestion, the boss listens more carefully because now it's several people. And that's really what's happening is workers are standing up together, and that collective action is what gives strength. It's what gave strength to steelworkers who work at Starbucks in Victoria, British Columbia, who recently organized with our union and who recently got a first contract. And it's why now we're seeing workers, in other parts of Canada and across the U.S., namely in Buffalo, New York, at Starbucks, where workers are standing up together and saying, we have this sense of community together. We have some things we want to see changed at our workplace. And the best chance we have at making change at our workplace is by doing it together.
Well, I think they see the power of having a union and the benefit and the power of having a union behind you. They see the benefit of solidarity. They see the benefit of collective action. They see what happened with Striketober and how employees got what they wanted with the solidarity, with this the collective action. And that's why it seems more and more workers are looking to organize in more and more areas where they haven't been, whispering, in the break room about unionizing. You mentioned last year the USW members in Victoria, British Columbia, who ratified their first contract with Starbucks. I'm hearing there's a lot of cheering from the sidelines, not just in Canada, but here in the United States at other Starbucks, like you mentioned, Buffalo, and even more that are looking to do the same. Is that true? Is this becoming, like a wildfire?
I think it is. And I think that it goes beyond Starbucks. It's just an example. But, we are getting a lot of interest from workers in all kinds of sectors who want to, like I was saying, want to make change in their workplace. They see things that they don't like. They were deemed essential and then are non-essential when it comes to things that they need. And so you look at the recent fight at Amazon, that big warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama, where there was a vote last year, and the National Labor Relations Board has ruled that Amazon broke the law and was intimidating workers, and it will be a new election now. But if you look at that, one of the most difficult things facing that campaign at Amazon is that there is such high turnover at some of these employers. There are less than half of the people who were there last year are currently there. And so there's a lot of churn, particularly at employers where they face the kinds of conditions that Amazon workers do. There's a reason why people don't stay there. And the only way to change those working conditions isn't because we talked about corporate America, getting their head on straight and seeing that these are real people with real concerns that should be dealt with. And I will mention, these are not the kind of conditions that they would be willing to work under. Instead, they're okay imposing it on other people to make money for them, but they would never do that. Just like, they were safely working from their offices on Zoom, while many of our members went to work every day during the pandemic, especially during those early days when it was scary. We had no idea what was happening. And so you see that workers are wanting to become union. They're wanting to have a voice at their workplace, but they still, Leslie, face so many challenges in doing that because there are just so many obstacles that are in the way to try to prevent them from being able to do that.
No, absolutely. When you talk about Amazon, those employees face stiff opposition from Amazon, and many employees face very stiff opposition from their employers, not just at Amazon. Workers that are actively seeking protections of a union. And the reason these corporations are fighting so hard, why? Because these corporations know that a union for these workers is going to be better for the workers. Otherwise, they wouldn't be fighting so hard. And the reason these employees these workers are fighting so hard to unionize is because they know it will be better for them. They know that they need somebody to help them, to stand in the gap with these corporations. And like you said, I was thinking about something at my kid's school when you said that. I complain, it's one thing. I get a group of moms to complain. Well, now we have their attention, right? So, I mean, they know that a union is not only going to be there to sit down at the table, to speak on their behalf, to have their back, but to be able to fight on a different level, a stronger level, to get those wages, to get those healthcare benefits, or the cost of those healthcare benefits to be reduced, to get that life insurance, or to keep that life insurance, to keep that pension, to get a pension, or to have those vacation days that you keep them or you're added to them, you don't get them taken away. They know this. They're seeing this place after place after place. Sometimes I'll see union membership is down, and I'm thinking, how? Because you just see more and more places, more and more workers wanting to unionize because they know it's going to be a benefit to them, and that they see workers at places like Amazon, Starbucks, and Hollywood, right, as well. Who are saying we need this, we can't do it ourselves, and we know that we'll be better for it if we do.
That's right. I mean, there's more public support right now for unions than there has been in decades. So we know people are supporting the labor movement, supporting unions, but also wanting to have better things for themselves and their families and the next generation. And so when workers start to organize, that's when they really see what kind of obstacles are in their way that corporations throw up in their way, rules that Congress passes in order to, cut the power of workers and to give more power to corporations. And, I was thinking about this the other day, Leslie. My great union, the Steelworkers, was organized in the middle of the Great Depression. And that, sometimes it takes these periods of stress and something major happening in the world and the country that really sparks energy and action. And, my union was founded in the fire that way. And I think that we will see other unions and other workers gaining unions because of the strength that they feel right now, given what's happening in the last 2 years with the pandemic, with this collective action that we're seeing, and with the labor shortage, allowing them to have more power than they might have had, a couple years, 3 years ago. And so I really feel like we're at a very inspiring time, and that people are very courageous and are stepping forward. And I'm really glad to see it.
Absolutely. We're almost out of time. In less than a minute, anything you want to say that I didn't ask or that we didn't cover?
I would like to just thank you for having me on and say that, I think that Striketober is something that happened, but it's not something that ends in October because it's called Striketober. It's a movement that's going to keep gaining steam.
Absolutely. And I want to say, to your point, where USW was formed in the fire during the Depression, if you will, to your words, I like that. The intimidation by corporations is tough, but if you fight and you're in solidarity and you're united, it's worth it, because once you're in that union and the union's behind you, the intimidation does stop. And the corporations use the intimidation, hoping that these workers won't make it through the fire of that to become a union and to get the wages, the benefits, the holidays and things like that, the pensions and the insurance, life insurance and other things that they deserve. Melinda, thank you so much for being with us. Melinda Newhouse from the Steelworkers, Director of the USW's Strategic Campaigns Department, like I said. Please check out their website. They do more than steel, usw.org. Follow them on Twitter @Steelworkers. Follow them on Instagram @Steelworkers. I'm Leslie Marshall. A shout out and thank you to Mark Grimaldi, our executive producer. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll be back with you next week.